The sun blazed overhead, its heat oppressive as the endless desert stretched out in every direction. Kaius stood in the same spot, the barren landscape familiar and yet foreign at the same time. He wasn't sure how long he had been here, but his body screamed in exhaustion. Every muscle felt like it was on the verge of giving out. The shadow before him stood as still as ever, its figure looming against the blistering heat. He had no choice. The spirit's voice echoed in his mind, cold and commanding. You will repeat this until you can touch the shadow. But each strike, each fall, felt heavier than the last. His body wasn't meant for this kind of endurance. The sun's merciless rays beat down on him, and the dust swirling around his feet clung to his skin. A sharp pain in his chest. The ground tilted beneath him, his legs buckling under the strain. He collapsed to the earth, his vision blurring. Everything felt numb as his breath hitched and his mind went blank. He couldn't take it anymore. And then, nothing. Kaius awoke with a start, his eyes snapping open. His body ached, but there was no scorching heat, no desert stretching endlessly before him. The hospital room came into focus, soft white walls, the faint hum of medical equipment, and the familiar scent of sterile air. His mother, Elena, was at his side, folding his clothes into a neat pile. She paused when she noticed him stir, her expression softening instantly. "Kaius," she said warmly, her voice a balm for his confusion. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" Kaius blinked, disoriented. His limbs felt stiff, but there was no desert, no sun burning through him. His chest didn't feel as heavy as before, and the pain that had gripped him was gone. He wasn't sure what to make of it. Was the desert, was the shadow, real? Had it been some kind of fever dream? "Better," he managed to say, his voice hoarse. I think I'm feeling a little better." Elena smiled, a trace of relief in her eyes. She set the clothes aside and moved closer, brushing a few strands of hair from his forehead. "That's good to hear. You've been through quite a bit, but I'm so glad to see you waking up." Kaius stared at her for a moment, still unsure. The disjointed feeling of having just come from another place lingered in the back of his mind, but he pushed it down. It wasn't real, he told himself. It couldn't have been real. As if on cue, there was a soft knock at the door before it opened. The doctor entered, a clipboard in hand. He gave Kaius a reassuring smile. "Good news, Kaius. You're cleared for discharge. We've monitored your condition, and everything looks stable. You're good to go home." Elena's eyes lit up at the news, her face brightening with happiness. Kaius, on the other hand, was still processing the strange mix of exhaustion and relief that seemed to tug at him. "I'm cleared?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," the doctor confirmed. "You should take it easy for the next few days, but you're well enough to leave the hospital. Your recovery is progressing nicely." Kaius nodded slowly, trying to shake off the lingering confusion from his mental training in the desert. The doctor handed a few papers to Elena for signatures before taking his leave, giving them both a warm, encouraging smile. As the door closed behind the doctor, Elena's gaze softened, her concern for him evident. "You ready to head home, Kaius?" Kaius hesitated, his thoughts still caught between the reality of the hospital room and the vision of the desert. He wasn't sure when the next stage of his strange training would come, or even what it meant, but he knew that for now, all he could do was return to what he knew. "Yeah," he replied quietly, his voice steady but distant. "I think I'm ready." Kaius stood in front of the mirror, tugging at his shirt, feeling a strange tightness in his chest that had nothing to do with the discomfort of the hospital gown. The calm weightlessness of the hospital room, the quiet beeping of machines, and the scent of antiseptic air made everything feel unreal. His body ached, but it was a different kind of ache from what he had felt in the desert. He wasn't sure which one felt worse, the exhaustion of his strange training, or the lingering emptiness of being in this place at all. He caught his own reflection in the glass, staring at the unfamiliar face that looked back, as though he didn't quite recognize himself. "Almost done, Kaius?" Elena's voice broke through his thoughts as she folded his clothes neatly on the bed, her hands moving efficiently. There was something about the calmness in her voice, the way she was making everything feel so normal again, that made him hesitate. Was it real? The desert, the shadow? "Yeah," Kaius answered, his voice sounding small in his own ears. He glanced back at the door, his mind still caught on the strange vision he couldn't quite shake. "No, it couldn't have been real. Not when I'm here." He turned back to face his mother, but before he could speak, the door suddenly burst open. "Nathan!" Elena exclaimed, her surprise quickly replaced by a playful frown. Nathan strolled into the room like he owned the place, a grin plastered across his face. His posture was relaxed, arms crossed over his chest as he surveyed the scene with an all-too-familiar glint in his eyes. "Hey, look at that. Kaius, up and about already. You just couldn't stay down, could you?" Kaius shot him a half-hearted glare, but there was something about Nathan's energy that grounded him. "Nathan, don't you have something better to do?" "Oh, come on," Nathan waved a hand dismissively. "There's nothing to do around here. Plus, I figured I'd walk you home, make sure nothing happens again." He leaned against the doorframe, a teasing smirk still in place. Kaius felt his frustration flare up slightly. "Nothing's going to happen. I'm fine." "You sure about that?" Nathan raised an eyebrow, his tone light, but the concern flickering in his eyes was unmistakable. "I mean, it wasn't exactly a typical trip to the store, was it?" "What was it again? Orc? Or was it something bigger?" Kaius gritted his teeth, resisting the urge to snap back. His brother was just being Nathan, playful, but there was an edge to his words. Maybe it was because Nathan had been there, in the background, worried that something could happen again, Kaius thought. "Yeah, I'm sure," Kaius finally muttered. "But it's nothing to keep you worried about. I'm fine." "Of course you are." Nathan pushed himself off the doorframe and strolled further into the room, glancing at their mother. "So when's he getting out of here, Mom?" Elena smiled warmly, walking over to the bedside and folding Kaius's clothes with meticulous care. "The doctor cleared him for discharge, so once he's ready, we're good to go." Kaius couldn't help but feel a little more grounded with Nathan around, despite the teasing. Nathan had always been there for him, and maybe that was why Kaius didn't mind the annoying commentaries about his recovery. "Good, 'cause I was gonna drag you out of here anyway," Nathan said with a wink. Kaius rolled his eyes but couldn't suppress the tiny grin that tugged at the corner of his lips. "Don't act like you'd miss the chance to walk me home." Nathan shot him a playful look. Who said anything about missing it? As the light-hearted moment stretched on, Kaius caught his mother's gaze. There was a quiet pride there, a softness in her eyes that made him feel both reassured and unsettled. He wasn't sure what to make of all of this. Was the desert training real? The shadow, the pressure, the voice. They all felt too vivid to be imagined. But as the sounds of the hospital and Nathan's teasing filled the room, a sense of normality slowly crept back in. Maybe it had been just a dream. Maybe. "All right, let's get you out of here," Elena said, breaking his thoughts as she handed him a new set of clothes. "You're already late for dinner. Your father will be glad to see you back home." Kaius nodded slowly, unsure of what to feel, but he let himself go through the motions. Later, he thought, "I'll figure it out later." Kaius's footsteps echoed as he walked through the school gates, the familiar sounds of Mana Academy greeting him like an old friend. The crisp morning air had a refreshing bite to it, and the usual chatter of students drifting through the courtyard felt like a strange contrast to the chaos he'd endured. He glanced around, half expecting to see some sign that things weren't quite as they seemed, but there was nothing. The campus was as it always was, alive with students laughing, chatting, and hurrying to their first classes. It almost felt as though the events of the past few days were some far-off dream. He hadn't been back since the orc attack, and a small part of him half hoped it would feel like it never happened at all. But it didn't. It still lingered deep in his mind, like a dark shadow waiting to resurface. As he approached the entrance to the main building, a voice called out to him, "Kaius!" Turning, Kaius saw Leah, Callan, and Selene approaching. Their faces were a mixture of concern and curiosity, and he felt a slight pang of guilt for not being here sooner. They had probably heard the rumors about his hospital stay, and the news about the attack was likely still fresh in their minds. Leah smiled brightly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey, it's good to see you up and about. How are you feeling?" Kaius hesitated, glancing down at the ground for a moment before meeting her gaze. Better, still a little stiff, but nothing serious. Callan, ever the straight shooter, raised an eyebrow. "You sure? I heard you had a pretty rough time. Orc attack, right?" Kaius stiffened slightly at the mention of the attack. It felt surreal, like a distant memory, yet it was still fresh in his mind. He nodded, trying to keep his response light. "Yeah, it was an experience, but I'm fine now." Selene was quieter than usual, her dark eyes studying him as if trying to read something he wasn't saying. "It must have been scary," she murmured. Kaius felt a lump form in his throat. It had been terrifying, but that wasn't something he was ready to admit. Instead, he gave a non-committal shrug. "I'm just glad it's over with." Leah, sensing the shift in the mood, changed the subject quickly. "Well, it's good to have you back. We missed you around here." Her voice was warm, but Kaius could tell she was treading lightly. It was clear they all wanted to talk, but something held them back. Maybe the unspoken tension from the attack. Kaius managed a small smile. "Yeah, I missed this place too. It's weird being away for so long." Callan nodded in agreement. "We've all been talking about it. What happened, I mean. It was a pretty big deal, but I don't think anyone's going to forget about it anytime soon." His words felt oddly sharp to Kaius, like they were underscoring the weight of what had happened. But there was a certain comfort in the normalcy of his friend's presence, in their concern that didn't feel too heavy. They weren't treating him like someone fragile, but it was clear they were still thinking about what happened. "I know," Kaius said quietly, "but it's nice to be back." Selene, who had been quiet until now, spoke up softly. "You seem different." Kaius blinked, taken aback by her comment. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, as though weighing her words carefully. "I don't know. Just different. Not in a bad way. It's like you're carrying something, but you don't want to talk about it." Kaius's heart skipped a beat. Her insight was eerily accurate, and for a moment, he wasn't sure how to respond. He couldn't tell them about the strange training, the overwhelming feeling of being lost in that desert, or the spirit's cold voice in his mind. The last thing he wanted was to make them worry more than they already were. "I'm just getting used to things again," he said finally, his voice feeling too small, even to his own ears. Leah gave him a supportive smile, though her eyes were still searching. "We're here for you. You know that, right?" "Yeah," Kaius nodded, the tightness in his chest loosening slightly. It wasn't much, but for now, it was enough. "All right," Callan said, slinging his bag over his shoulder. "We should probably get to class. Can't let the teachers think we're slacking off just because we're checking on you." He grinned, and despite the tension in the air, Kaius couldn't help but smile back. As they began to head towards the school building, Kaius's thoughts drifted once again to the strange, dreamlike desert. The sense of normalcy around him felt almost too perfect, and a flicker of unease gnawed at him. Was it really over? Had the training truly ended, or was he just waiting for the next step to begin? He didn't have the answers yet, and he wasn't sure when he'd get them. But for now, surrounded by friends who genuinely cared, maybe it was okay to push those doubts aside, at least for a little while. The first few days back at school passed in a blur of routine. The comforting monotony of classwork, the hum of whispered conversations, and the occasional joke between classmates was like a balm to the storm Kaius had been through. At least it felt that way on the surface. He focused on keeping up with his lessons, but a sense of quiet unease tugged at him beneath the surface. It wasn't the normal kind of stress. No, this was something different, a low hum that seemed to pulse just out of reach. It had started on his first day back and hadn't let up since. It happened in his first class on Monday during a lecture about magical theory. As Professor Valen spoke, his words becoming a faint buzz in Kaius's ears, something stirred within his mind. Fascinating, the flow of arcane energy, so fragile, so easy to manipulate. What is this? Light magic, you call it? Kaius's heart skipped a beat. He froze for a split second, his fingers tightening around the stirring stick in his hand. He could feel it. Someone was speaking, but not out loud. The words weren't coming from anyone in the room. He blinked rapidly, his pulse quickening. His thoughts scrambled for a reason, anything to explain what just happened. He had to be imagining things. Just stress from the weekend, he told himself, forcing a breath and trying to focus on Professor Valen's next words. It wasn't until later that day, in the middle of his chemistry class, that the voice returned. Chemistry, the science of transformation, but not the real power. This is child's play. If only you knew what true alchemy feels like. Kaius's hand jerked slightly as he stirred the chemicals in the beaker. The reaction bubbled more than expected, and he quickly adjusted it to keep the mixture from spilling over. His mind raced. This isn't real, this isn't happening, he repeated in his head, trying to focus on the task at hand. He could feel his heart pounding, but no one seemed to notice. His classmates were absorbed in their own experiments, unaware of the strange disturbance in his mind. Later, in his history of magic class, the whisper came again, this time softer, like a shadow lingering on the edges of his consciousness. History, a tale of forgotten names and lost legacies. Tell me, Kaius Vale, do you understand the weight of your lineage? Kaius's hand shook slightly as he adjusted his pen, his gaze slipping to the pages of his notebook. His mind struggled to stay focused, but the voice was relentless. The question lingered like a heavy fog, and he suddenly found himself staring blankly at his paper. His lineage, was the voice referring to? No, it couldn't be. He had to be imagining it. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, hoping no one had noticed his momentary lapse. Leah, who sat next to him, gave him a quick glance, but he quickly forced a smile, trying to dismiss any concern. At the end of the day, when the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Kaius quickly packed up his things and headed out the door. The hallways were full of students heading to their next class or home, but Kaius moved like a ghost, absorbed in his own thoughts. As he stepped outside into the crisp air, he was surprised to find Callan and Celine standing near the exit, waiting for him. "Hey, Kaius," Callan greeted with a grin. "You're back to your usual self, huh?" "Yeah, I guess," Kaius replied, trying to keep his tone casual, but the unease from the whispers still gnawed at him. Celine, her eyes slightly downcast, gave him a small nod. "It's good to see you back," she said quietly, though there was a note of curiosity in her voice. "Thanks," Kaius muttered, glancing between the two. He could tell they had questions, but he wasn't in the mood to answer them right now. The last thing he wanted was to talk about what was going on in his head. "So, you all heading home?" Kaius asked, trying to steer the conversation to something more neutral. "Yeah, but we should catch up tomorrow," Callan suggested. "You know, make sure you're not getting into too much trouble without us." Kaius managed a weak smile. "I'll be fine. I'm just figuring things out." With that, they all exchanged goodbyes, and Kaius watched them walk off before heading home himself. The whispers had faded for now, but the strange, unsettled feeling remained. He couldn't shake the sense that the world was normal again, not in the way it should be, but in the way that felt off, like the calm before a storm that only he could feel. The gym buzzed with the sound of sneakers against the polished floor, the smell of sweat hanging in the air as Kaius found himself in the middle of a sparring match with Callan. His classmates were scattered around the edges, their eyes flicking between the two as they watched. "Ready to lose, Vale?" Callan teased, a grin pulling at his lips as he squared off. Kaius forced a strained smirk, but it didn't reach his eyes. His usual playful retort tangled in the chaos swirling in his mind. "You wish," he muttered, but even his voice sounded hollow, like a line he was reciting rather than feeling. They circled each other, the rhythmic thud of their shoes echoing in the gym. But Kaius couldn't escape the whispers creeping at the edge of his thoughts. Every step felt heavier than the last. His heart hammered in his chest as the pressure of their presence pressed down on him. The others were watching, waiting. As the first blows were exchanged, something strange happened. A rush of clarity washed over him, but not in the way it should have. The voice in his mind was louder, more insistent, urging his body to move. It wasn't his own thoughts, but something deeper, something he couldn't control. So, this is combat training, a test of the body. Fascinating. Kaius froze mid-step, disoriented. The voice wasn't his, but it felt like it was coming from inside him, moving him. His body jerked forward before he could stop it, his legs propelling him with a precision he didn't know he had. Callan lunged at him, but Kaius sidestepped effortlessly, his movements sharp and exact, like his body was doing it without him. "Focus, Kaius." Callan's voice broke through the fog, but Kaius was already lost. The world blurred, and all he could hear was the voice in his head. "Interesting," the voice inside him mused. "You've moved before, but this is different." Kaius stumbled, trying to regain control, but it was too late. Callan's fist slammed into his ribs, sending a wave of sharp pain through him. The physical ache barely registered against the storm inside his mind. "Focus," he muttered under his breath, trying to wrestle with the sensation overtaking him. "I can't lose control now." Callan stepped back, his brows furrowing. "You okay?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. But there was something more in Callan's eyes now, something Kaius couldn't place. Unease? Curiosity? He couldn't tell. Kaius didn't answer. The whispers were back, louder now, more demanding. "You can do better. You must do better. Don't just fight. Command." A surge of energy coursed through him, stronger this time, like a wellspring of power he couldn't explain. His body moved with precision, his muscles tightening under the direction of the voice rather than his own will. He wasn't sure how, but before he knew it, he was behind Callan, dodging the punch and landing without effort. Callan's expression shifted from confusion to surprise. "What's going on with you?" he asked, his voice catching in awe. That was different. Kaius remained silent, his mind too tangled to respond. The whispers had receded, but the weight they left behind was crushing. He wanted to answer, to explain, but the words didn't come. He could still hear it, the voice, tugging at his insides. Callan clapped him on the back, but Kaius barely felt it. "Nice moves, Kaius," Callan said, voice casual. "You almost had me there." Kaius forced himself to nod, his throat dry. "Yeah, thanks," he muttered, the words coming out like a broken record. The weight of their eyes on him felt like 100-pound weight pressing on his chest. He could feel the stares from the others in the gym, Leah, Celine, and the others. Their eyes felt like hot pins on his skin. Celine's gaze was intense, unreadable, and Leah's was filled with admiration. Both reactions felt wrong, like something had shifted, and Kaius wasn't sure if he could handle it. "Yeah, you really got some moves," Leah said, her voice cheerful, cutting through the tension but making it worse at the same time. Kaius's gaze darted around, and he wished he could shrink, disappear into the floor. "Thanks," he said, his voice weak. The whispers grew louder again, their presence closing in. He wasn't the unnoticed kid anymore, not after today, and the weight of it, the attention, the expectation, was unbearable. His legs moved before he could stop them. He turned quickly, walking away from the group, his sneakers echoing like a drumbeat in the silence behind him. "Hey, you good?" Callan's voice called after him, but Kaius didn't stop. His chest tightened with every step, and he couldn't keep up the facade anymore. The buzzing in his mind hadn't stopped. It was worse, stronger now, like something had awoken inside him. He reached the water fountain, leaning over it, the cool metal a brief comfort against the heat rising in his face. He forced himself to slow his breathing, to calm the rapid thudding of his heart. But even as he did, he realized something else. He wasn't the quiet, unnoticed kid anymore, and he didn't know how to handle it. The final bell rang, and the gym's atmosphere shifted, buzzing with chatter as students filed out. Kaius moved quickly through the crowd, eager to escape the weight of the stares that still lingered in his mind. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the school grounds as he hurried toward the exit, his heart still racing from the adrenaline of the sparring session. He could feel their eyes on him, the weight of everyone's curiosity like a physical pressure. But more than that, the whispers in his head hadn't stopped. They were quieter now, but still present, like a distant storm threatening to break. "I just need to get home," he thought, trying to shake off the unease. Home will be better. Home will be quiet. But just as he reached the gate, a voice called out to him, "Kaius, wait up!" Kaius froze, his hand gripping the gate's iron bars as he turned. Leah, Callan, and Selene were walking toward him, their expressions a mix of excitement and hesitation. "Hey," Leah began, her eyes wide. "That was amazing in there. You really nailed those moves. Callan and I were thinking, maybe you could show us how to do that. You know, the precision thing, the way you dodged." Callan, usually laid back, nodded eagerly. "Yeah, you were like, everywhere at once. How'd you do that? Can you teach us?" Selene, usually quiet, stepped forward too. Her dark eyes were intense, searching him. "It looked like you weren't even trying. Can you show me? I think I could do it too." The requests hit Kaius all at once, like a weight crashing down on him. He felt his stomach twist, a sense of panic rising in his chest. He rubbed the back of his neck, unsure how to respond. I really need to get home. You know, my parents will be waiting." It wasn't a lie. His mom would be expecting him, and he needed the time to try and process everything that had happened today. But as he said it, he realized how lame it sounded, like he was making an excuse. Leah tilted her head, clearly disappointed. "Oh, okay, maybe another time then?" "Yeah, sure," Callan added, his enthusiasm dimming but still present. "We get it. Family stuff." Selene, though, didn't seem to let it go so easily. She looked at him for a long moment, her gaze searching. "You really don't want to show us?" she asked quietly. Kaius hesitated. The weight of the question made him pause, but the pressure of their expectations was more than he could handle right now. He wasn't sure why, but the thought of teaching them felt like too much, like he was being asked to carry something that wasn't his to bear. I just need a break," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'll see you guys tomorrow, okay?" Without waiting for a response, he turned and hurried through the gate, his sneakers slapping against the pavement with each step. He kept his head down, not looking back as he made his way toward home. The weight of their attention pressed on his back, but it was the voice inside him that was the hardest to shake. It was louder now, not quite speaking, but more like a constant hum at the edge of his thoughts, tugging at him. What did I just do? He wondered, his stomach turning with a strange, empty feeling. He tried to shake it off, but the further he walked, the heavier the silence around him felt. He couldn't stop thinking about the way Callan, Leah, and Celine had looked at him, like he was something different, like he was someone they needed, or even worse, someone they expected to be more than he could ever be.